The next area that we're going to be discussing is basically the Kashmiri Shaivism, which is a very substantial area, and I think it's also a very misinterpreted in certain ways. We will focus on Abhinavagupta, but I want to avoid going into a discussion of ideology, and I want to remain consistent with things that we have discussed before regarding assumptions that we bring into the conversation, in terms of categories that we assume to be the case, and to clearly be making the distinction between what is an oral tradition and what is a literary tradition, a tradition of texts, of the text that may be transmitted orally, where the authority for that text is in the voice, and a text which is represented on manuscript and then finally printed and published, which is a modern concern. I mean, this is all that we basically deal with today in terms of interpreting the text, but this wasn't the case for the lineages of an oral tradition. So before we start discussing this, Jennifer had some questions. I don't know if all of you had the chance to look at some of her questions on Google+, but I think that they're very relevant because they reveal something about us, what we're looking for, what we're attempting to obtain, and we have to be clear that we're not looking for a new ideology. We're not looking for something to believe in. We're looking for a way to get a handle on consciousness. We're looking for a way to know ourselves. So what is of interest to us is application. So Jennifer, could you just briefly go over some of these questions that you have? Are you there? You have to unmute yourself. I'll take a couple steps back. And there was a question or a comment that was regarding the Vedas. This is a good place for us to start off. And what I picked up in the comment was the desire to find some meaning in the Vedas, a universal meaning in the Vedas that would give us something to believe in or something to hang on to. And I started discussing the Vedas as code. Now, you can say there are Christian mystics, Kailash can comment on this, that will say that the Bible is written in code, and that what this code is doing is delivering a message to the world that can be found inside of this code. And you'll find Islamic mystics that can do the same thing with the Quran, And in fact, there is a whole way of thinking that Aldous Huxley articulated in 1946 in his book Perennialism, that claims that Scripture is this almost a code-like thing concealing a message. Now, this is where the Vedas differs from all this. That, yes, we are dealing with code, but we are not dealing with message. We're not dealing with an interpretation of this code any more than it is of interest to us to interpret the programming language of Microsoft Word. The value of this code in Microsoft Word is that we can put it into our computer, we can turn it on, and we can write a book, or we could write a letter, or we can write a report, or we can do what we want with word processing. So in other words, it is the application of this code, of this language, that is of value to us. Now, for the technical people, for the experts, for the knowers, then they may play around with this code to enhance the application, to change the application, to deal with the application in one way or another. But the Vedas, you see, goes a couple steps further. Because at the same time that you have the code, you have an aesthetic involved. A lawful aesthetic that is based on certain structures and rules. That you have rhymes and rhythms and meters. You have stories and storytelling. And you have gods and goddesses and backgrounds, and you have a whole world, almost a Vedic virtual world, that is created on the surface level of storytelling. But at the same time that we have the surface level of storytelling, we have the meta language sitting underneath it, which is the code. Now, this is not universal. This is not something that is for everybody to believe in. It's not a matter of faith any more than using Microsoft Word is a matter of faith. Sometimes I have to have faith that the computer works in the first place, or that I can get connected to the internet. But as far as my faith that the code of Microsoft Word is sufficient to make the program work, no, I don't need to have that particular faith. It is the knowers and the practitioners of the Veda that have this access. And their goal in using this application, right, is that putting this application on and making this application run in the same way that you run a program on your computer, the result is balance and prosperity for the society. To the knowers of the tradition, to the great grammarians, to the great mystics, to the metalinguists, the Veda consists of all the possibilities of speech. Now, in a mirror sense, in a reflective sense, we can say that that applies to all speech. And I will admit there is a bit of a leap of faith in that. But this is certainly the conclusion of the Indian grammarians, and I think that this is the conclusion of modern Western grammarians as well. So the Veda is this source. When Panini sits down and composes the meta-language, and we've discussed this, I think, in length, the language that instructs and creates and manifests the main language, the language of the people, the language of communication among people and things, the meta-language, which are the rules and the descriptions that make this language possible. He takes the Veda as the source for his material in creating or in composing his meta-language. Now the same goes for Patanjali. Panini, Patanjali, these are Brahmin priests. Their goal of the meta-language and their linguistic compositions and their commentaries is to maintain this treasure, as it were, of the Vedas. A treasure for everyone? No, not a treasure for everyone. Access to everyone? No, not access to everyone. In the same way that your Microsoft Word code, everyone doesn't have access. People use the results of that. They enjoy the results and the fruits of that. But it is not the access per se that is interesting to the vast majority of people who benefit from that. So this is the role that the Vedas play in the Indian culture, and the relationship that these great thinkers, grammarians, and mystics had with the Vedas. This is not the same as a religion having faith in a holy book. The relationship is very different here.